So that trance loveliness right there is WaveOSC, a new plugin released by Plugin Boutique as part of their new core plugin series. Except it's not really released new. This is actually an old plugin that's been reskinned. See, Soundspot, who made a number of plugins that I've used for years, recently went out of business and sold their plugins to Plugin Boutique, who reskinned a number of them and updated and fixed a few things. So this, in fact, used to be Soundspot's Union wavetable synthesizer, a plugin that was $150 normally, but was always on sale for $10. So lots of us treated it like it's cheap and junky. In some ways it was. The interface was not particularly intuitive. It was a little frustrating trying to navigate it. So Plugin Boutique kind of fixed a few of the issues with the original, made it simpler, much easier to navigate and follow. So let's go ahead and dig into it. Starting out, you have two oscillators enabled. You can disable any of them by pushing the little power buttons here or on the oscillators themselves. You have multiple wave shapes to choose from, starting with a good old sine. Moving on to square. I actually like how they do their squares quite a bit. Good old saw. A triangle. A little video gamey there. Good old noise oscillator. It's noisy. Surprisingly, there's an organ. And there's some fun stuff you can do with that. And my personal favorite one, a metallic oscillator. Up high, doesn't sound that good. Oh, there's some applications for it, but this one's particularly good for basses. Dubstep. So, you have lots of tuning options up top, from octave, up to 5 octaves, semitones, standard FL pitch bend will do basically the same thing, fine tuning, so you can get a little bit microtonal there. You can double click on any of these parameters and just type in the exact amount you want. And coarse tuning, which I don't know why it goes as high and low as it does. Aside from providing you with lots of fun modulation options. Then, part of what made this plugin unique compared to some other plugins at the time, when Union was new, is the fact that you can have up to 32 voices for unison on every individual oscillator, for a grand total of 96 voices simultaneously. As such, this can be a little bit of a CPU hog on lower to some mid-level CPUs. So if you're using this one and you have an kind of computer, expect some issues. So as with that crazy unison, that's a little jarring, but I'm also on the metallic setting. Let's go ahead and dig into the nitty-gritty of the oscillator, which is on this little pencil square icon right here. So this opens up into your classic ADSR controls. One thing that Union and WaveOSC do differently is that instead of knobs, you have an envelope to control each of them. So we have your attack, which is controlled by this. Decay, which is basically how high this button goes, this knob goes. Sustain, or rather, your decay is this left to right, and your sustain is the vertical control. And then your release is this one. So, good old simple stuff there. You also have ADSR for your modulation controls, and an LFO. So, you'll notice we have lots of controls down here. There are individual filters for each oscillator. You can make it either 12 or a 48 dB curve for really surgical stuff. You can change it to high pass filters too. Lots of modulation options with that. Classic resonance. Their resonance is really clean sounding. I really like how they do it. Not as jarring as some resonances can be. But don't turn it crazy high. You have your phase, which is useful because with all the unison and detuning and all that stuff that you can do with these three separate oscillators, you can have some phase cancellation start happening. The phase knob helps fix a little bit of that. Changes when the phase begins and can help reduce some of that phase cancellation. There's the detune knob, which is directly correlates with your number of unison voices that you've selected. So you can make it crazy trancy or nice and smooth. There's your blend knob. I can't remember exactly what this does. Let me see if I can hear it. Okay, so that determines how much of your unison voices are mixed with the primary oscillator voice. So all the way to the left, dry non-unison signal. All the way to the right, nothing but your unison signal. There's mid-side, or basically stereo processing inside of each oscillator as well, which is very useful. All the way to the left, mono, or mid. All the way to the right, you'll only hear your stereo or side information. Double-click on it, back to a good happy middle. Classic pan control and level controls. So, in the previous version of this plugin, in Union, you could open this up, and to link any of these parameters to one of these controls down here, you'd have to click this little dot. So blue means it's on the LFO, purple means it's on the ADSR. So I like that Plugin Boutique made that a little more intuitive and turned it into drag and drop modulation. So just click and drag, stick it in the square, boom, it's linked. Now I can tweak the knob and we'll see this little kind of teal knob appear. What that does is determines how much of my mod ADSR is being applied to the cutoff signal. For example, so let's just say I'm doing it that way. If I adjust this, basically how high is the peak of the ADSR is what this little knob right here is determining. You can link all these things, make it move crazy fast and forth between mid and side if you want for some absurd processing. Let's look at our LFO. Can go from 32 bars to 1/32 something of a beat with a triplet. Kind of hard to hear that because it's so fast. They're just playing with the mid and side information right there. So lots of fun you can do there. Double click on the modulated square to remove all of that. So what did I just do? Oh yeah. So remember I said the metallic is good for basses? There we go. So you can turn on the other oscillator. Have my nice little sub bass going. part of where this plugin gets kind of fun is when you're dealing with the third oscillator, which is specifically your wavetable one. So you'll notice in this screen right here, you don't see anything going on. It's empty. That's because you manually generate a wavetable. So if I hit generate wavetable, I just made one that is a blend of my metallic oscillator and sine wave. I can click and drag on the picture to move that up and down. So let's mute my other two oscillators and listen to what this one's doing. So at first I really thought that was going to be very limiting because, I mean, you can basically only combine like a square with a sine or a saw with a square, which that can still come up with some fairly fun stuff. I gotta turn those back on for it to do anything. There we go. So now if I were to listen. So you can do okay stuff with that. But again, where this plugin shines, there's something extra that you gotta do. So notice that oscillator 1 is routed into all these effects, and so is oscillator 2. And then those are routed to the generate wavetable plugin, or button. So basically, I can generate a wavetable based on oscillator 1 plus oscillator 2 plus any of these effects. So if I just enable a phaser and keep these on so that it'll actually produce a sound, then generate a wavetable from that, doesn't look that different, right? But if I actually turn on my phaser, increase the mix, increase my starting, my stages, my feedback, now I'll hit generate. I have a drastically different wavetable now. Let's listen to it. Basically, it just mixed a phaser into the wavetable. So that suddenly becomes very powerful, because as you mix and match each of these different effects right here, you can get progressively different wavetables. Plus, those effects actually automatically are routed to your 1 and 2 oscillators. So if you have oscillator 3 shut off, these will just apply kind of effects to the first 2 oscillators. Or you can listen to your wavetable that you just made. So tons and tons of cool things that you can do with that. Basically, this makes it so that you can make a virtually limitless amount of these oscillator why can't I talk? Of wavetables. That's what I'm thinking of. Yes. It's really cool to me to hear how different they are. Now here's something I haven't tried. I'm going to throw an LFO on my lovely little thing on oscillator 1. Turn my sustain max, good. Filter sustain, be to max. That's fun, actually. So let's see. I want to see if changing that changes my wavetable. It does. Yes. So based on the modulation parameters that you throw in here, you'll get an even more drastically different wavetable. For example. So what started out as a cheap, crappy $10 plugin suddenly gets nuts. You also have the ability to save your wavetable or load wavetables. I don't have any wavetables to load, but you can load your own wavetables into this, which is a nice handy-dandy feature. So let's dig into some of the other fun stuff. So first off, we have a huge variety of effects on that are built into this thing. So you got your classic phaser with all of its controls here, a delay, some distortion, and this is actually based on Union's old Ravage plugin, distortion plugin, with 6 different distortion styles, low and high pass filters, drive, and mixing for parallel signal processing, and a good old reverb. There are 3 different types of reverbs. Studio. So let me re-enable my first one. And I should probably turn off that LFO. Let's put my ADSR back on. I'm going to disable the phaser and the delay. Turn on my reverb. Ugh. That sounds really chunky. But so you'll find that you have your stereo width here, mono reverb, super wide stereo, mix for parallel processing, turn up the length, let's see what it does. Not too bad. It's really not a bad reverb. There's a hall setting. Adds a little extra stereo information. And a church setting. So big, kind of tinny. But that also has a lot to do with the dry sound that I've been playing with. You also have a number of master effects that will be applied over everything. All 3 oscillators plus your effects chain going into the 3rd wavetable even. So you got another option for your delay. Clicking it, it's fairly similar to the delay. It's basically the same delay thing here. Good old chorus. Got it to where you can convert it into a mono chorus, which is kind of nice, or a stereo chorus. Got another filter. That's 4 different filters. 1 per oscillator, and then a master filter. You can turn it into low passes or high passes, just like within the oscillator itself. And this one has the benefit of having a drive knob. The drive is a nice feature because I feel like that adds a lot of grit and character to the filter. You can turn it off here. Phaser. Now, I'll say that some of these plugins, some of the effects will actually sound a little cheap in some ways, and others sound a lot better than I think they should. Another way to add reverb right here. Exactly the same controls as the other one. Same reverb types. A flanger. So one thing that's kind of cool, this was one of Union's earlier plugins, or one of Soundspot's earlier plugins, and they actually took a lot of the main effects inside this and turned them into some of their other effects plugins, such as like Nebula, which you can't buy anymore. But you got your good old flanger. Has that same little stereo and mono control that the chorus has. It's nice, makes it mono compatible. Got a compressor built in. Kind of optical based too, so turn your threshold down, turn your ratio up. You can see how much it's working. And you can do parallel compression, which is nice. And boost the gain. Then you have more distortion. Same stuff, same 6 as are up here. And, of course, an equalizer. This one is not crazy visual. This one requires that you use your ears. You have 4 different bands. So like a low shelf, high shelf, and 2 bell curves in the middle. You can change any of them, including adding low pass or high pass, just by clicking on the shape here. You can disable the thing to kind of A-B your sound. At your cue, figure out what frequency you're tweaking and how much gain you want to have altered. That's all the primary effects. One thing you may have noticed is all these little LFO 1, 2, 3, 4s over here. That's because you have 4 different individual oscillators for your effects. So you can adjust your rate with this knob, phase, smoothness, so on and so forth. So you also have good old portamento and velocity controls, which is kind of nice. You can set it so that it's very legato. Which can be fun. Or just have it so that it always glides. Which is nice. Then you got velocity. Just adds velocity sensitivity to it. And that is pretty much all the things about this plugin. So, what is my personal opinion on this plugin? I actually really like it. I was trying to dabble with Union, but I found that its interface, though, again, all the same features are there. As pretty as this interface is, I just felt it really frustrating to try to navigate. A lot about it was really confusing. I mean, for example, just look at how different all this is compared to your good old, well, the newer WaveOSC. All the knobs are basically there, but just something about their design just feels easier to read and look at. I feel like the sound is very slightly cleaner in WaveOSC. I can't actually tell if they cleaned up the sound synthesis from Union, but it feels fairly solid and good. The effects, some of them, to me, feel a little generic and kind of hard to work with. Like the reverb especially. Like, if you have it just right, this reverb can sound very warm and beautiful. Like, this plugin is actually fantastic for pads, especially. Just the way the reverb works and how it has that kind of tinny echo sound to it lends itself really well to certain types of pads. This plugin works great for trance, dubstep, all sorts of different genres like that. Just because of the different number of oscillator shapes, the Union detuning, and just how nuts these wavetables can get. Like, you can create so many based on your individual oscillator modulation that you've picked, and all these 4 effects. So I think that this thing is capable of some truly wild sounds. Is it a Serum killer? Definitely not. But if you can't afford the $200 price tag for Serum, $80 for this is actually pretty dang good. You can do a lot with this dang thing. So, like, certain things about it I really enjoy. Others not as much. Like I said, just the reverb just kind of bugs me. I feel like I can get a much better reverb just with my own personal plugins. Like BT's Tails is one of my favorites. And like, it's just a lot easier to get a pretty beautiful reverb with that plugin than it is with this particular plugin's reverbs. Another pet peeve of mine about this thing is for the ADSRs and the LFOs, there's no grid lock. I can't tell it to lock straight to this bar. It's just, you put it anywhere. And that, as a perfectionist, drives me nuts. It can be good in that it can give it a little bit more of a natural feel with you kind of fiddling with knobs and whatnot. But outside of that, I don't like that. I want it gridlocked. One little thing I forgot to mention with this one here on the third oscillator. So you do have your mod ADSR and LFO. To actually connect the wavetable to those things, click these little dots and tweak that. So right here, that's my LFO. And this little knob up here is like which direction the LFO travels and how much. I can delink them so that my left oscillator and right oscillator are doing totally different things, which can add for even more uniqueness in the sound. Not gonna lie, that's actually pretty cool. So, again, that I feel like is the best freaking feature of this plugin, is how it processes wavetables, how you can make your own, upload your own, whatever. This makes it so you can make sounds that other plugins can't, that just come preset with specific wavetables. Not a bad thing. You can still do a lot with that. But this you can make your own. So I actually like this plugin a fair bit. I'm going to be using it a little more. Can I recommend it? Like, I would actually say that I can. I don't know if I'd pay the full $80 for it. I might put about $50 into it. But outside of that, a fairly solid plugin. Thank you very much for watching this video, guys. If you enjoyed it, hit like and subscribe down that way. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you can see my beautiful face even more. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you have a great day.